leaving you behind!
That urn held my wife, Clara. She had died after a long illness, and before she passed, I made her one promise. My name is Samuel Barrett. I'm 42 years old, a former Army sergeant, a widower, and the father of a 7-year-old girl named Nora. If you had seen me that morning in Salt Lake City International Airport, you probably would not have guessed any of that. You would have seen a tired man in a faded flannel shirt, worn work boots, and a wooden cane. You would have noticed the limp. You might have noticed the carbon fiber prosthetic below my left knee. What you would not have seen was the reason I was flying across the country with my little girl and a ceramic urn hidden inside my carry-on bag. That urn held my wife, Clara. She had died after a long illness, and before she passed, I made her one promise. I told her I would take her back to the Atlantic coast, to the stretch of beach where I had proposed to her 20 years earlier. Nora was too young to remember that place, but Clara loved it. She called it the one place where the wind could make a person feel small without making them feel worthless. So I saved for months. I cut every expense I could. I skipped new clothes, cooked cheap meals, and kept spare cash in an old coffee can on top of the refrigerator. When I finally had enough, I bought 2 first-class tickets. I did not care about champagne or fancy food. I wanted Nora to have one beautiful memory connected to her mother. I wanted her to feel, just for one day, that grief had not taken everything from us. My back was screaming before we even boarded. The steel in my spine always hurt more when the weather changed, and a storm system was moving across the country. Still, I smiled when Nora saw the first-class cabin. "Daddy, the seat is huge," she whispered. "It better be," I said. "I think we just spent your college fund on it." She laughed. That sound alone made the money worth it. She slid into seat 2A by the window and pressed both hands against the glass. I lowered myself into 2B, careful with my leg, then placed my carry-on beneath the seat in front of me. My fingers stayed on the bag for an extra second. Clara was inside. I remember thinking, we made it. 10 minutes later, a gate agent walked onto the plane and proved how quickly dignity can be taken from someone. His name tag said Derek. He was young, sharply dressed, and carrying a tablet. Behind him stood a man in a dark tailored suit with silver hair, a gold watch, and an expression that said he was already angry at everyone in the room. Derek stopped beside our row. "Mr. Barrett. Wes. I need you and your daughter to gather your things. We're relocating you." I looked at him, certain I had misunderstood. "Relocating us where?" "To economy." Nora turned from the window. "But these are our seats." Derek did not look at her. "There's been a priority accommodation." The suited man exhaled loudly. "Can we speed this up?" "I have a board meeting in Charlotte." Derek nodded. "Of course, Mr. Sterling." That was the first time I heard his name. I took out my phone and opened the boarding passes. Seats 2A and 2B. Paid in full. Assigned weeks ago. Derek lowered his voice, but not enough to keep nearby passengers from hearing. "Or Mr. Sterling is one of our highest tier customers and a major shareholder. We need flexibility. Then find him another seat." A Sterling stared at my boots, my cane, then my face. "You've got to be kidding me." I felt Nora's hand slide into mine. Derek's jaw tightened. "Sir, I'm instructing you to move. I'm telling you I can't easily move. I have a prosthetic leg and spinal injuries. My daughter is 7. We are settled." Sterling gave a short laugh. "Everyone has a story." I looked at him. "This isn't a story. It's my body." His expression hardened. "People like you always want special treatment." The cabin became very quiet. Nora whispered, "Daddy? Did we do something wrong?" That question hurt more than anything Sterling could have said. "No, sweetheart," I told her. "We didn't do anything wrong." Derek stepped closer. "I'm not asking again." Then he reached down and grabbed my carry-on. My heart stopped. Don't touch that bag. He pulled anyway. I grabbed the strap. Let go. Sir? Release the bag. That contains my wife. He frowned like he thought I was being sarcastic. Then he yanked hard. The bag slipped from both our hands and slammed onto the floor. A ceramic sound came from inside. Not a break, not quite. Just one hard, hollow clink. But in my mind, it was an explosion. The cabin disappeared. For one terrible second I was back overseas, surrounded by smoke and shouting, watching a burning vehicle twist in the dust. My hands moved before my thoughts did. I grabbed Derek by the front of his jacket and pulled him down. He gasped. People screamed. And then Nora cried out, "Daddy!" Her voice snapped me back. I released him immediately. Derek stumbled away, one hand at his throat. I stared at my own hands in horror. I had not punched him. I had not tried to choke him. But I had grabbed him, and I knew exactly how it looked. Derek pointed at me.
Security! Call security now.
Sterling stepped back with a cold smile, as if he had just won. Nora started crying. I bent toward her. Look at me. You're safe. But I wasn't sure that was true anymore. Within less than a minute, 2 airport police officers appeared at the front of the cabin. One of them reached for restraints. Derek spoke first. He assaulted me. Sterling said, I witnessed the whole thing. I looked at the officers and felt something inside me collapse. I had survived war. I had survived surgery after surgery. I had survived watching Clara grow weaker, while pretending I still believed every doctor who told us to stay hopeful. But I could not bear the idea of Nora watching me get dragged off a plane while strangers treated us like criminals. Officer, I said, please. My wife's ashes are in that bag. We are taking her to the ocean. Just let me pick it up before you do anything. The officer looked down at the bag. Then the cockpit door opened. The sound was small. The effect was not. The senior captain stepped out, looked across the cabin, and locked eyes with me. His face changed. He stared at the faded military insignia clipped to my bag. Then he stared at me again, and without saying a word, he came to attention and raised his hand in a perfect military salute. The entire cabin went silent. I knew that salute before I understood why he was giving it. Every muscle in my body remembered what to do. I reached for my cane, forced myself upright, and returned it. My left leg shook inside the socket. My back felt as if a hot wire had been pulled through it, but I stood as straight as I could. The captain lowered his hand. Sergeant Barrett, he said. I had never seen him before. Derek's face lost its color. Sterling's confidence faded for the first time. The captain turned toward the officers. Nobody is putting restraints on this passenger until I understand what happened on my aircraft. One officer said, Captain, we received a report of an assault. And you'll get the facts, he replied. Not just the loudest version. He looked at Nora, then at the bag on the floor. What happened? I opened my mouth, but Derek rushed in. I asked him to move because Mr. Sterling required the seat. He became aggressive. The captain looked at our boarding passes. Then he looked at Sterling. Were these seats assigned to you? Sterling folded his arms. I'm a Premier Diamond member and a shareholder. How your staff knows how these situations work. That wasn't my question. Sterling's mouth tightened. No. The captain turned to Derek. Were Mr. Barrett and his daughter properly ticketed in 2A and 2B? Derek hesitated. Yes. Was there a safety reason to move them? Numbo. An equipment issue. Numbo. Then you attempted to remove a disabled passenger and his 7-year-old daughter from seats they purchased so you could satisfy a wealthy customer. Derek swallowed. Captain, I was following priority service expectations. No. The captain said. You were following fear. Sterling stepped forward. This is ridiculous. Do you know how much business I bring this airline? The captain faced him. I know exactly how much your ticket cost. And I know it did not buy the seat beneath that child." A few passengers quietly murmured in approval. Sterling pointed at me. He put his hands on an employee. "I did," I said before anyone else could speak. Everyone looked at me. I lost control for a second. He dropped the bag containing my wife's ashes. "That doesn't excuse what I did." Nora squeezed my hand. The captain studied me, then nodded once. Thank you for telling the truth." He asked the officers to take statements from the nearby passengers. A woman across the aisle immediately said Derek had grabbed my bag first. Another passenger had recorded part of the confrontation on his phone. The video showed Derek pulling the bag, me warning him, and my instant release when Nora screamed. The officers spoke quietly with one another. Finally, the lead officer put the restraints away. "No arrest at this time," he said. "We'll document the incident." My knees nearly gave out from relief. Then the captain pointed toward the back of the plane. "Mr. Sterling, you have two options. Accept the open seat in the last row, or leave the aircraft." Sterling stared at him. "You'll regret this, maybe," the captain said. "But I'll regret it more if I teach a 7-year-old girl that money decides who deserves respect." Sterling snatched his briefcase from the overhead bin and marched toward the rear. The cabin stayed silent until he disappeared behind the curtain. Then someone started clapping. I hated it, not because I was ungrateful. I simply did not want to be a spectacle. I wanted to disappear into my seat and hold my daughter. The captain seemed to understand. He told everyone to settle down, then helped me inspect the bag. The urn was intact. A flight attendant wrapped it in 2 blankets and placed it carefully in a secure compartment. Before returning to the cockpit, the captain leaned close. "My name is Thomas Bennett," he said. "When we reach cruising altitude, please meet me in the forward galley." "Why?" His eyes became wet. "Because I've been trying to find you for 3 years." That sentence stayed with me through takeoff. At 30,000 feet, I walked to the front with my cane. Bennett was waiting with his cap off, without the uniform's formality. He looked less like a captain and more like a tired father. He handed me a photograph. A young soldier stood beside a dusty armored vehicle, smiling at the camera. "My son," Bennett said. "Leo." At the instant I saw the face, a locked door inside my memory opened. Fire. Gunshots. A vehicle on its side. 3 men trapped inside. I gripped the edge of the counter. Bennett continued slowly. "His convoy was hit in the eastern province. The report says 1 soldier ran through open fire, pulled men from the vehicle, and kept going even after he was wounded." I could barely breathe. "He was the last one," Bennett said. "Leo was the last man you carried out." The galley seemed to tilt. I had spent years trying not to remember that day. I remembered heat melting the skin on my hands through my gloves. I remembered dragging 1 soldier by his vest. I remembered an explosion throwing me to the ground. I remembered looking down and realizing part of my left leg was gone. I had never learned the names of 2 of the men I saved. Bennett put a hand on my shoulder. "My son is alive because of you. He has a wife now, 2 daughters. I have grandchildren because you refused to leave him behind." I looked at the photograph until my vision blurred. He's really okay." Bennett smiled. "He's more than okay." Now, for the first time that day I cried. Not from humiliation, from relief. Before I left the galley, Bennett said something else. "When we land, the airline will want to speak with you. What happened today was not a misunderstanding. I'm making a formal report. I don't want money. This isn't about money." His face hardened. "It's about finding out how a passenger with a valid ticket was targeted in the first place." I thought about Derek's certainty, Sterling's confidence, the way both men acted as if moving us was routine. And suddenly, the incident felt bigger than 2 seats. It felt like a system. For the first time, I wanted to know how deep it went. When we landed in North Carolina, the sky was already turning the color of bruised steel. Captain Bennett walked Nora and me off the plane himself. At the gate, a station manager was waiting with an apology and a business card. She said the airline's legal department wanted to speak with me immediately. I told her not today. Clara had waited long enough. I rented a car, strapped Nora into the back seat, and placed the urn beside me where I could see it. Before we pulled away, my phone buzzed with 3 missed calls from an unknown number and 1 text. Mr. Barrett, this is Marcus Thorne, Chief Legal Officer. Please contact me as soon as possible. There are details about today's incident you need to know. I stared at the message. Details. That word bothered me. I turned the phone face down and started driving east toward Emerald Isle. For the first 40 minutes, Nora talked about Captain Bennett. She wanted to know why he had saluted me, what kind of soldier I had been, and whether the young man in the photograph knew I had saved him. I gave her simple answers. Some memories are too heavy to hand to a child. Then the rain began. At first it was a soft tapping against the windshield. By the time we reached the coastal highway, it had become a steady sheet of water. Marsh grass bent under the wind. Pine trees leaned over the road like dark witnesses. That was when I noticed the black sedan. It was 3 car lengths behind us. I changed lanes. It changed lanes. I slowed from 60 to 45. It slowed too. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I told myself I was imagining it. But trauma can turn coincidence into threat. A car becomes a convoy. A popping exhaust becomes gunfire. A stranger's glance becomes surveillance. So I made a test. At the next intersection, I turned right without signaling. The sedan followed. My stomach dropped. I took another turn down a narrow road that looped past a clothes bait shop. The sedan followed again. "Daddy," Nora said. "Are we lost?" "No, baby." That was a lie. I knew exactly where I was. I just did not know who was behind us. My mind went straight to Sterling. He had threatened the captain. He had called himself a major shareholder. Men like that did not like being embarrassed in public. Maybe he wanted the video. Maybe he wanted me scared. Maybe he wanted Clara's bag. Then my phone rang again. Unknown number. I ignored it. The sedan moved closer. Rain hammered the roof. Nora looked over her shoulder. "That car keeps following us." "I know." My voice sounded too calm. That frightened me more than panic would have. I turned toward the public beach access where Clara and I had once watched the sunrise together. The parking lot was nearly empty because of the storm. I pulled in fast, stopped beside a wooden barrier, and shut off the engine. The black sedan entered 30 seconds later. It parked at the far end. Its headlights stayed on. I could see only the shape of a driver. I had 2 choices. Stay trapped in a car with my daughter, or move toward open ground where I could see anyone approaching. I chose the beach. "Nora, take your backpack. Stay beside me." "What about Mom?" "I've got her." I carried the urn beneath my jacket and fought across the dunes. And my prosthetic sank into the wet sand. Every step burned. Wind drove rain into our faces hard enough to sting. The ocean was wild. This was not the peaceful goodbye I had imagined for months. There was no sunset, no quiet speech, no soft music from Clara's favorite playlist. There was only black water, white foam, thunder, and a terrified child holding my hand. We reached the rocks. I set the urn down. "Nora," I said, "we're going to say goodbye to Mom now." She started crying before I did. I opened the lid. For months I had practiced the words I wanted to say. I forgot every one of them. So I said the only thing that mattered. "Clara, I love you. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. I'm sorry this took so long." I kept my promise. Nora placed her hand over mine. Together we tipped the urn. The wind lifted the ashes instantly, and they spun around us in a silver cloud, then vanished into the storm. I felt something inside me tear open, then, strangely, loosen. The urn became light in my hands. Behind us, gravel crunched. I turned. A large man in a dark coat was crossing the path from the parking lot. He had come from the black sedan. I pushed Nora behind a boulder. Stay there. Daddy. Please. I reached into my pocket and closed my hand around the folding knife I carried for utility work. I did not open it.
Not yet.
The man kept coming. Sergeant Barrett. He shouted through the rain. I froze. He knew my name.
Stop right there. He stopped.
Who are you? He raised both hands. Marcus Thorne. Airline legal. My phone buzzed in my pocket at the exact same moment. I took it out. Another message from the unknown number appeared. I'm at the beach access. I'm sorry for following you. I need to speak with you before Sterling does something worse. I looked from the screen to the man. And suddenly I understood. The mystery had followed us all the way from the airplane. Marcus did not come any closer until I told him he could. He was soaked through, breathing hard, and clearly regretting the way he had approached us. I should have called from the car, he said. Following you was a terrible decision. You think. Yes, absolutely. Nora peeked out from behind the rock. Marcus looked at the empty urn, then lowered his voice. I'm sorry we interrupted this. I studied him. You said Sterling might do something worse. Marcus opened a waterproof briefcase and removed a folder sealed in plastic. Captain Bennett called our operations center during the flight. We started reviewing the seat change. There was no seat change. Exactly. He handed me the first page. It was a system log. Seats 2A and 2B had been assigned to Nora and me for months. Less than an hour before boarding, someone had entered an internal service note marking our seats as available for priority reassignment. Who? Derek's supervisor code was used. I felt anger rise. Marcus continued. But that's not the part that concerns me most. Sterling's assistant had called the station earlier that morning. She wanted 2 adjacent first-class seats. There weren't any, so they chose us. We believe Derek chose you after seeing your profile and assuming you would be easy to pressure. My jaw clenched. Why us? Marcus looked uncomfortable. Your record showed no elite status. No corporate travel account. No history of complaints. And your ticket had been purchased with a combination of savings, certificates, and a promotional credit. In other words, and the system had told them I had less power. I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. They calculated who was least likely to fight back. That is what we are investigating. Marcus showed me another page. It contained several older customer complaints. The names were blacked out, but the descriptions were clear: elderly passengers moved for premium members, a mother separated from a child, a disabled traveler pressured to give up a bulkhead seat. Are these all Derek? Some involve him. Some involve the same station team. Nora tugged my sleeve. Daddy, can we go somewhere warm? That brought me back to reality. I put my coat around her and told Marcus we were done for the night. He nodded. One more thing. He gave me a sealed envelope. Inside was a full refund for our trip and a written guarantee that the airline would cover our return travel. I'm not signing anything, I said. You don't have to. This isn't a settlement. Good. Marcus almost smiled. Captain Bennett said you'd say that. We drove to a small hotel near the coast. After Nora fell asleep, I sat by the window listening to the storm and reading the copies Marcus had given me. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt sick. The problem had never been a single rude man in a suit. Sterling had acted with confidence because people had made room for him before. Derek had acted with confidence because he had learned which passengers could be pushed aside without consequences. The real insult was not that they thought I belonged in the back. It was that they had done this often enough to believe nobody would stop them. At 1:17 in the morning, my phone rang. This time the number was not hidden. Captain Bennett. Samuel, I'm sorry to call this late. What happened? There was a pause. Sterling has filed a complaint against me. He's also demanding the airline preserve the cabin video because he says you threatened him and that I endangered the flight by allowing you to remain on board. I stared at the rain. Can he get you fired? He can try. My stomach tightened. Bennett had stood up for me, and now his career was at risk. What do you need from me? Nothing tonight.
No.
Tell me, he sighed. The passenger video matters. So do witness statements. Legal is collecting them. I remembered the man across the aisle recording Derek. I can help find him. The next morning, Marcus connected me with the investigation team. They already had several passenger contacts. But one key video was missing, the full recording that started before Derek touched my bag. I remembered a detail. The passenger who filmed it had been wearing a red University of Utah sweatshirt and traveling with a teenage son. The airline found his booking record. His name was Daniel Price. He sent the video within an hour. I watched it once. That was enough. It showed Derek whispering to Sterling before approaching us. It caught Sterling saying, "Pick someone who won't make trouble." Then Derek looked directly at me, my cane, my worn clothes, my daughter. And he said quietly, "Those two should be easy." I stopped the video. For several seconds, I could not move. I had spent years wondering whether strangers saw me as weak. Now I had proof that two men had counted on it. Something inside me changed. I called Marcus. What do I need to do? For what? To make sure they never do this to another family. That was the moment grief turned into purpose. The investigation moved faster than I expected. By noon, the airline's executive team had the passenger video, the internal seat logs, witness statements. Even Derek's own written report. His report claimed I had become hostile without warning. The video showed otherwise. Marcus called me from a conference room. "Samuel, I need your permission to play the cabin recording during an internal review." "You have it." "There's more. Sterling's office has contacted us twice. His attorney is threatening a shareholder action if Captain Bennett isn't disciplined." I looked at Nora, who was sitting on the hotel bed drawing waves with a blue crayon. "Then don't protect me," I said. "Protect the truth." That afternoon, they asked me to join the review by video call. I almost refused. I hated cameras. I hated telling strangers about the worst moments of my life. But Bennett had put his name and career on the line for us, and I could not let silence become another weapon for Sterling. When the call began, I saw a row of executives, legal staff, safety officers, and two board representatives. Derek appeared from another room with a company representative beside him. Sterling joined with his attorney. He looked exactly the way he had on the plane, polished, impatient, certain that status would rescue him. One board member asked me to describe what happened, so I did. I did not exaggerate. I did not hide my own mistake. "I grabbed Derek," I said. That was wrong. I reacted when he dropped the bag containing my wife's ashes. I stopped the instant my daughter called my name. A Sterling leaned toward his camera. "There." He admitted assault. Marcus spoke before I could answer, and the full recording will now be played. The video began. Nobody spoke as Derek approached our seats. Nobody spoke as Sterling complained. Then the room heard his voice clearly. "Pick someone who won't make trouble." Derek looked toward us. "Those two should be easy." The video continued through the argument, the bag hitting the floor, my reaction, Nora's scream, and my immediate release. When it ended, Sterling's attorney whispered something to him. Sterling's face had gone pale. A board member asked, "Mr. Sterling, did you direct an employee to displace another passenger because you believed that passenger lacked influence?" Sterling scoffed. That is an absurd interpretation. Did you say the words we just heard? I was frustrated. Did you have an assigned first-class seat? No. But, did Mr. Barrett? Silence.
Yes.
Derek tried another defense. I believed accommodating Mr. Sterling was important for customer retention. Marcus placed the internal complaints on screen. Was that also your reasoning when an elderly couple was separated last month? Or when a mother and child were moved from seats they had selected because a corporate traveler wanted the row? Derek stopped speaking. I expected to feel satisfaction. Instead, I felt tired. This was not the kind of revenge people imagine in movies. There was no shouting, no dramatic punch, no moment when I stood over the men who had humiliated us. There was only evidence, and evidence was stronger. By the end of the review, the airline placed Derek and his direct supervisor on termination review. Sterling's priority privileges were suspended pending the board's decision. Captain Bennett was cleared of wrongdoing. 2 days later, the decisions became final. Derek was fired. His supervisor was removed for approving repeated improper seat overrides. Sterling lost every elite privilege connected to the airline and was permanently banned from using shareholder status to influence passenger operations. The airline also ended a corporate travel arrangement tied to his company until new compliance terms were accepted. But the consequence that hurt him most came from his own behavior. Daniel Price's video leaked online after the investigation closed. I did not release it. I did not ask him to. The public saw Sterling's face and heard his words. Pick someone who won't make trouble. His company issued a statement distancing itself from him. Within weeks, he stepped down from an executive committee position. People called it karma. I called it a receipt. The world had finally handed him the bill for the way he treated people when he thought they had less power. Marcus called again a week later. The board wants to offer you compensation. I don't want a payoff. It isn't hush money. There's no confidentiality clause. What is it? A commitment. The airline created new rules requiring supervisor approval and documented passenger consent before a seated traveler could be moved for non-operational reasons. Disability-related seating conflicts would receive additional review. Staff would receive training based partly on what happened to Nora and me. Then Marcus told me something I was not prepared for. The board also wants to establish a fund in Clara's name. I could not speak. He continued. 2. It would support education for children of wounded and fallen service members. Nora would be one of the first beneficiaries, but not the only one. I sat down. All week I had wanted justice. Suddenly, justice had my wife's name. That broke me. Nora came over and climbed into my lap. What happened? I covered the phone and whispered. They're going to help kids because of Mom. She thought about that. Then she smiled. So Mom is still helping people. I held her so tightly she complained she could not breathe. For the first time since Clara died, I felt like something good had grown from the space she left behind. 10 years have passed since that flight. Nora is 17 now. She is taller than Clara was, has the same bright eyes, and laughs with her whole body. This fall, she is starting university to study marine biology. She says the ocean feels like the only place big enough to hold all the things she still wants to tell her mother. The Clara Barrett Fund has helped dozens of children since it began. Some are the sons and daughters of wounded veterans. Some lost a parent. Some simply grew up watching a mother or father rebuild a life after service. Every year Nora reads the names. Every year, I think about the day a stranger tried to take our seats because he decided we looked powerless. Sterling disappeared from public view after the video spread. I heard he eventually left the company that once made him feel untouchable. I never contacted him. I never threatened him. I never needed to. That was my revenge. He wanted us moved to the back because he thought money decided who mattered. Instead, his own words followed him everywhere. Derek sent me a letter about a year after the incident. He apologized to Nora first, which mattered more to me than anything he said about me. He wrote that losing his job forced him to understand how easily he had turned customers into categories: elite, non-elite, important, unimportant. I did not become his friend, but I accepted the apology. Justice does not always require hatred forever. Captain Thomas Bennett retired a few years later. We still talk on Sundays. His son Leo once flew out to meet me in person. I had prepared myself for something dramatic. Instead, he walked into my kitchen, looked at my prosthetic leg, and hugged me so hard I almost lost my balance. He brought his daughters. The older one is named Clara. When he told me that, I had to step outside for a minute. Some gifts are too heavy to receive in front of people. Nora and I still fly to the coast each year on the anniversary of Clara's death. We still sit in first class, but the seats do not mean what they used to. They are not proof that we are rich. They are not proof that we are special. They are a reminder. A reminder that dignity is not something another person gives you. It is something you refuse to surrender. I still have bad days. My leg aches when storms come in. My back stiffens after long flights. Crowded places can still pull me toward memories I would rather leave buried. But I am better at returning to the present now. When that old panic rises, I look at Nora. I listen to her voice. And I remember that the strongest thing I ever did was not running through gunfire. It was choosing not to let anger decide what kind of father I would become. If I had to summarize what happened to us, I would say it this way. A grieving father and his little girl boarded a plane, carrying the ashes of the woman they loved. Two men judged them by their clothes, their status, and their silence. They tried to push them aside for someone wealthier. The humiliation triggered a terrible moment, but the truth survived it. A captain recognized the father as the soldier who had once saved his son. That single act of respect opened the door to a larger investigation, and the investigation uncovered a pattern of people being treated as less important because they had less influence. In the end, the people who abused that power lost it, and Clara's name became attached not to grief, but to opportunity for other families. And what did I learn? I learned that you should never confuse quiet with weak. I learned that money can buy comfort, access, and attention, but it cannot buy character. I learned that telling the truth about your own mistakes makes your truth stronger, not weaker. I learned that the most satisfying revenge is not destroying someone. It is making sure they can no longer hurt people the same way. And I learned something else from Nora. Children remember how we act when the world embarrasses us. They watch whether we become cruel, whether we give up, dull, or whether we stand back up. So if you are listening to this while carrying your own grief, your own anger, or your own invisible pain, remember this. The people who look past you do not get to decide your value. You do. A few months ago, Nora and I boarded another flight to North Carolina. She took the window seat. I sat beside her. As the plane climbed above the clouds, sunlight poured across her face. She looked at me and said, "Dad, Mom would be proud of you." I smiled. "No," I said. "Too. She'd be proud of us." Then I looked out at the endless white clouds and heard Clara's voice in my memory, clear as if she were sitting in the empty space between us. "You kept your promise, Sam." For years, I thought the highest rank I had ever earned was sergeant. I was wrong. The highest rank I will ever have is Dad. And nobody, not a wealthy businessman, not an airline employee, not grief, not war, not pain, can ever move me out of that seat. Thank you for staying with me to the end of this story. If this story made you feel something, or reminded you that dignity matters no matter who you are, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd especially like to know this. If you had been sitting on that plane and watched a father and his little girl being ordered out of seats they had paid for, would you have stayed quiet, or would you have stood up for them?